Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to, I forgot my intro.
It's been 84 years.
Let's try that one more time. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to IGCSE Success, your one-stop shop. One eternity later. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to IGCSE Success, your one-stop shop for everything first language English. First of all, are we all doing well? If you're not doing well, this dark storm will pass. And by dark storm, I am of course referring to most of you watching this being in the thick of your IGCSE exam. Whew, I need to put the aircon on.
It is 91,000 damn degrees.
So if you are sitting your exams, just remember, keep working hard, don't burn the midnight oil too frequently, and show Cambridge what you're made of. And I forgot to say, number one rule, look after yourselves. So on to today's agenda. Guys, we have a jam-packed video, and when I say jam-packed, there's no hyperbole there. Trust me. I will be diving deep into all of the writer's effect questions from the November series. Yes, all three. I'm putting myself through such torture for you guys.
Can't do it.
You can.
So if you are feeling a little bit shaky on those pesky writer's effect questions, this video is your golden ticket, and this is the only video you need. I promise you. I will be taking you through some strategies that I use with my year 11s. I'll show you some nifty tips and tricks, and of course I will provide full model responses for each paper. So buckle up, grab your favourite beverage of choice, and let's dive straight in, because something tells me this is going to be an almighty long video. And with all that said and done, let's go.
Okay guys, so let's not waste any more time. As mentioned, I am going to be showing you 3 full writer's effect responses, and I will link all of the past papers in the description box should you wish to have a go, and I strongly recommend that you do have a go along with this video. Just make sure that you pay attention to the codes on the screen, so 0500 11, 0500 12, 0500 13, and these refer to the 3 different paper ones from the October-November 2023 series. So first of all, let's go through the basics, the nuts and bolts of the writer's effect question. So the first thing is that you are assessed on your ability to identify powerful words, phrases, and images. Yes, you can refer to other things as long as they link to meaning, but if you're not the strongest with this question, I strongly recommend that you just stick to zooming into powerful words, phrases, or imagery, so similes, personification, metaphors, onomatopoeia, etc. Now the word count, the suggested word count is 200 to 300 words. Do write more if time permits. I strongly advise my students, particularly those who are good with literature and analysing language, to go over the word count as long as they stay focused. Cambridge likes to use this phrase self-penalising a lot, and that basically means that the more you write, the less likely it is for you to sustain that focus. Yes, you can get full marks sticking to that word count, but the most important thing is that you spend 30 minutes on this question, and if that means writing 2 pages, 3 pages, that's absolutely fine. Number 3, of course, you are directed to 2 different paragraphs from text C, the narrative at the end, and you have to write 2 separate paragraphs, so a paragraph on each, and there should be 3 quotations in each. Do not analyse 2, do not analyse 1, and there's no need to analyse more than 3, 6 in total. Number 4, be sure to explore the explicit and implicit ideas. So the explicit meaning of words, so showing what those words or phrases mean within the given context, and it acts as a nice springboard into your analysis, exploring those implicit, deeper meanings of the words or the phrases or the images that you have selected. And lastly, of course, this question is worth 15 marks, 15 reading marks. There are no marks for writing. So I think I've said this before, you can have a somewhat haphazard writing style and still get top marks. Just make sure your writing is clear, coherent to some degree. The structure, which I will come on to shortly, there's some flexibility there. And if you have a look at my notes and tips on the right hand side, it is not a requirement to refer to subject specific terms, but it certainly will elevate your response. Remember, examiners have to mark hundreds of scripts. I used to mark exam papers myself, and it was always quite impressive when students had a strong grasp of word classes, the different types of imagery, and perhaps, and I say perhaps, referring to these techniques accurately may well give you, your response, the edge over others. Now, I'm just going to start by reading the notes and tips on the right-hand side. I've put here there is not one correct way to structure a response. It is a reading response. As long as you follow some sort of point, evidence, explain structure, that's absolutely fine. Just write clearly. Just make sure that an examiner can sort of understand what you're trying to say. Make a point, use evidence and zoom in. That's absolutely fine. It is a reading assessment. However, with that said, this is the structure that I use with my year 11 students, and I have used this structure for many, many years. I do tend to tweak it from time to time, but essentially there are 10 steps. So the first step is establishing the overall effect of the language. So what is the writer trying to achieve? So each paragraph will begin with this topic sentence. The overall effect of the language creates an image of, and then you'll include your first image. So firstly, the writer describes. If you're good with embedding your quotations, that's absolutely great. If not, you can just put firstly, the writer uses the image. Again, that's absolutely fine as well. Number 3, the writer's use of imagery here refers to. Take note of that verb refers to. This is where you explain the explicit meaning of the word or phrase. Number 4, your most important step, this is your analysis. This is where you zoom into an aspect of the language. This is your implicit exploration. This is where you get your marks from, essentially. Well, most of your marks from. Then you kind of repeat the steps. So number 5, secondly, the writer describes. That's your second image, Number 6, the zoom in technique. Number 6, exploring the explicit meaning of your second image. Number 7, you use the zoom in technique again. Number 8, your third quotation. Number 9, your explicit meaning. And number 10, of course, is your analysis. So you just repeat those steps. If you can remember this structure, you're going to do absolutely fine, providing your analysis is focused, providing your analysis is relevant to the question. So let's kick start with our first paper. The narrative is titled The New Job, and it comes from the 0511 paper. And my tips on the right-hand side are to carefully reread the 2 paragraphs you are directed to, ensuring you understand the context and what is happening. So, text C, The New Job. Bit of context at the top. Let's take a read. So this text is about a young person called Jeswin who has just started to work for an airline company called Golden Tours. As part of their airport meet and greet team, Jeswin is being looked after on his first day by a senior member of the team, Edgar. Let's read the story. Edgar laid his large hand on Jeswin's small shoulder and strode onto the wide departures concourse as Jeswin tripped and danced to keep up with him. "You're going to be very busy today," Edgar announced, an ironic grimace contorting his round face. Edgar stopped suddenly and twisted Jeswin's shoulder through a dizzying 180 degrees so that Jeswin could see the workplace. The concourse at present was eerily silent. It comprised many empty roped-off labyrinths that passengers would negotiate before they reached the check-in desk, where their luggage would be surrendered into the safe hands of Golden Tours staff and deposited in the cargo area of the plane. Jeswin wriggled to detach himself from Edgar's large hand. He had been attached in a more figurative sense. Today to Edgar to learn his job, making sure that the passengers had the documents they needed to fly, showing them where to take their luggage and giving helpful and friendly advice. Edgard's expression began to radiate mild exasperation, and Jeswin turned to see its focus, a small knot of passengers wandering uncertainly towards the Golden Tour's check-in area. Their luggage trolley was performing a shaky dance not dissimilar to the movements of Jeswin's own feet a few minutes earlier. A small child hung onto its side, trying to deter 3 disobedient suitcases from unscheduled disembarkation. Jeswin immediately understood that his family might need support. "I've got a report to write for the boss tonight," huffed Edgard. "Apparently she doesn't know what our job involves. Ha." He marched towards the group. "Good morning, your documents please, so I can make sure they are in order before you drop your luggage off." Edgard flipped through identity documents with the dexterity of a master player shuffling a deck of cards before surveying the 3 suitcases. "Take it you packed those suitcases yourselves and you haven't been out of sight since you got here. Go to the roped area over there. Shouldn't be too long to wait." Now a few more groups were drawing closer. Jeswin approached the nearest group and followed the routine. This continued throughout the morning, meeting and greeting passengers bound for numerous destinations. Edgard had also told him to watch out for unattended luggage and report such items to him. This worried Jeswin. It felt like too much to focus on at once, especially as there seemed to be a lot of luggage around. Generally, though, Jeswin was pleased with himself. He was not as fast as Edgard, of course, but he remembered the meet and greet procedure, and he felt his courteous manner and diligence paid off, as he often received smiles and thanks in return. Edgard, on the other hand, was becoming more irritable. 15 minutes for lunch, as usual," he grumbled. "I've hardly seen you this morning, young man. Has everything been all right?" Suddenly, a shout came from one of the queues. "Hey, that man tried to steal my wallet!" An angry-faced accuser stood, finger aimed at an alderman behind him. Edgard immediately intervened. "Have we got a thief?" he demanded. "No, I'm not a thief. I'm a little unsteady on my feet, and I fell over." The alderman's chin wobbled as he spoke, and Jeswin saw his eyes blinking rapidly. Surely he was innocent. "Let me help," Jeswin said. "There is probably some mistake here, but you, sir, have had a bit of a shock and need reassuring about your possessions, so I'm going to ask Leo over there to let you put your luggage in right now. Meanwhile, you, sir, mustn't keep standing in this uncomfortable way. I am going to carry your suitcase over there to Maria." As Jeswin returned from Maria's desk, he saw Edgard smiling in approval. "Well handled, young man. You've given me some ideas for this report I've got to write." Now let's take a look at a standard writer's effect question. So of course it asks you to reread 2 paragraphs. In the case of this paper, it's asking you to reread paragraphs 2 and 4. Usually once you've read the story one time, you can kind of take a guess at which paragraphs are going to be chosen because they're full of unusual images. There's 2 bullet points, of course. So paragraph 2 begins, "You're going to be," followed by ellipses, and is about Jeswin's and Edgard's experiences at the beginning of the day. That information is really important. Paragraph 4 begins, "Edgard's expression began," and is about the arrival of the first passengers of the day. And then you've got your standard instructions at the bottom. So explain how the writer uses language to convey meaning. And to create effect in these paragraphs, choose 3 examples of words or phrases from each paragraph to support your answer. Your choices should include the use of imagery. Write about 200 to 300 words, and up to 15 marks are available for the content of your answer. And my tips on the side: pay close attention. I cannot stress this enough. Pay close attention to the information provided after the ellipsis, and try and include some of that information into your topic sentence for each paragraph. So bullet point 1, for example, it's about Jeswin and Edgard's experience. So the focus of your paragraph will be centered around that. Similarly, for bullet point 2, it's about the arrival of the first passengers of the day. So of course you need to try and include that keyword passengers there in your topic sentence for the second paragraph. So let's annotate, but before we do that, we need to reread the first paragraph we are directed to. Now remember to select your chosen images, ensuring to highlight them. It's good practice, and provide a brief annotation on their implicit meanings, and if you've got time, the explicit meaning as well. But it should be a very, very quick, brief annotation. So let's reread the first paragraph we are directed to. "You're going to be very busy today," Edgard announced, an ironic grimace contorting his round face. Edgard stopped suddenly and twisted Jeswin's shoulder through a dizzying 180 degrees so that Jeswin could see the workplace. The concourse at present was eerily silent. It comprised many empty roped-off labyrinths that passengers would negotiate before they reached the check-in desk, where their luggage would be surrendered into the safe hands of Golden Tour's staff and deposited into the cargo area of the plane. Now, before I show you the 3 images I have selected, take note of the tips. Be sure to identify powerful words, phrases, and images only. Again, I would avoid sort of irony, foreshadowing, sort of structural techniques if you're not the best at this question. You can get full marks just focusing on words, phrases, and images. And ensure you understand the vocabulary contained within your images. Don't try and take a stab in the dark. There will always be more than 3 images, so make sure you are confident with the vocab and aim to make 2 inferences about each image. Now let's take a look at the 3 images that I would personally select if I was doing this paper for real. The first one is an ironic grimace contorting Edgard's round face. The second one is Edgard twisting Jeswin's shoulder through a dizzying 180 degrees. How pleasant of him. And the last one is the airport comprising of many empty roped off labyrinths. Now, this table may well seem quite overwhelming to you. I did say before your annotations need to be quite brief and quite quick. But obviously I want to show you the process and I want to show you the kind of detail that Cambridge expect, particularly if you are aiming for top marks. So we're talking about 13, 14, 15 out of 15. So looking at that first image, an ironic grimace contorting his face, in terms of what that means explicitly within the given context, this refers to the unpleasant expression that Edgard wears. Now the implicit meaning, the deeper meaning, very much suggests that Edgard is keenly aware of the impending chaos and busyness, almost as if he is cynically anticipating Jeswin's struggle to navigate the influx of passengers and the many problems that are bound to arise. Now my second image twisted Jeswin's shoulder through a dizzying 180 degrees. This explicitly refers to Edgard forcibly spinning Jeswin around so he's able to see the workplace, and the implicit meaning could suggest that Edgard's sudden stop and physical maneuver very much highlights his assertiveness and perhaps even dominance. He takes control of Jeswin's body to ensure that Jeswin sees what he wants him to see, thus the dominance, the assertiveness, the control, as if he has taken advantage of Jeswin's newness to the job. And my last image, it comprised many empty roped off labyrinths. This refers to the airport being like a maze and very much being difficult to navigate. And this seems to suggest that the passengers will inevitably find it difficult to reach the check-in desk. Now, focusing on the bullet point at hand, this hints at Jeswin's overwhelming feelings and perhaps his sense of being daunted by what lies ahead. Now let's take a look at the second paragraph we are directed to. So Edgard's expression began to radiate mild exasperation, and Jeswin turned to see its focus, a small knot of passengers wandering uncertainly towards the Golden Tour's check-in area. Their luggage trolley was performing a shaky dance not dissimilar to the movements of Jeswin's own feet a few minutes earlier. A small child hung onto its side, trying to deter 3 disobedient suitcases from unscheduled disembarkations. Very striking personification there. Now the images I have selected are radiant mild exasperation, wandering uncertainly, and lastly the suitcases performing a shaky dance. Now let's take a look at the explicit meaning and the implicit meaning of the 3 images I have selected. So starting with radiate mild exasperation, This explicitly refers to Edgard's feelings of annoyance and frustration as the first wave of passengers approaches him. In terms of the deeper meaning, it highlights Edgard's clear resentment towards his job and its primary focus of delivering top quality customer service to ensure passenger satisfaction before their flights. It also implies a level of unprofessionalism as Edgard struggles to conceal his emotions and maintain a welcoming demeanour with the passengers. So hopefully you can see here, guys, I'm looking at different layers of meaning. I'm saying at least two things, and that's really what you want to aim to do if you are trying to secure top marks. The second image, wandering uncertainly. So this refers to the passengers being unsure of which direction to proceed, thereby emphasising the challenges of navigating the airport. Now this suggests Edgard's perception of them as clueless. In his eyes, their struggle to navigate something as seemingly straightforward as reaching the check-in desk reveals a lack of empathy on his part. And my last image, performing a shaky dance. This explicitly refers to the trolley's instability and difficulty in moving smoothly, and the implicit meaning implies a sense of frustration and irritation, perhaps reflecting Edgard's anticipation of the passengers causing inconvenience or delay. Now let's take a look at a model response, a top response for each of those paragraphs. Now, if you have a look on the right hand side, I've color coded each model response I've included in this presentation. So red is the topic sentence, the overall effect of the language. Blue is the quotation, purple is the explicit meaning, orange zoom in, and black is the implicit exploration or the analysis. The overall effect of the language creates an image of Edgard feeling both accustomed to and bitter about his new job and his workplace, whilst also conveying Jeswin's feelings of being overwhelmed at his new role and what it entails. Firstly, the writer describes Edgard as having an ironic grimace contorting his round face. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the unpleasant expression Edgard wears, conveying a palpable sense of dissatisfaction. Additionally, the writer's use of the phrase ironic grimace is particularly powerful, implying that Edgard is keenly aware of the impending chaos and busyness, almost as if he is cynically anticipating Jeswin's struggle to navigate the influx of passengers and the many problems that are bound to arise. Secondly, the writer describes Edgard twisting Jeswin's little shoulder through a dizzying 180 degrees. The writer's use of imagery here refers to Edgard forcibly spinning Jeswin around so he is able to see the workplace. Furthermore, the writer's use of the verb twisted is particularly striking, as Edgard's sudden stop and physical manoeuvre demonstrate his assertiveness and perhaps even dominance. He takes control of Jeswin's body to ensure that Jeswin sees what he wants him to see, as if he has taken advantage of Jeswin's newness to the job. Lastly, the writer describes the workplace as comprising many empty roped off labyrinth. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the airport being like a maze, making it difficult to navigate. Moreover, the writer's use of the word labyrinth is particularly effective, as it suggests that passengers will inevitably find it difficult to reach the check-in desk, hinting at Jeswin's overwhelming feelings and perhaps his sense of being daunted by what lies ahead. And the second paragraph. The overall effect of the language creates an image of Edgard viewing the passengers as nothing more than bothersome nuisances. Firstly, the writer described Edgard radiating mild exasperation. The writer's use of imagery here refers to Edgard's feelings of annoyance and frustration as the first wave of passengers approaches him. Additionally, the writer's use of the word exasperation is particularly powerful, indicating Edgard's clear resentment towards his job and its primary objective of delivering top quality customer service to ensure passenger satisfaction before their flights. It also implies a level of unprofessionalism as Edgard struggles to conceal his emotions and maintain a welcoming demeanour with his passengers. Secondly, the writer describes the initial wave of passengers as wandering uncertainly towards the check-in desk. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the passengers being unsure of which direction to proceed, thereby emphasising the challenges of navigating the airport. Furthermore, the writer's use of the phrase wandering uncertainly is particularly striking, as it suggests Edgard's perception of them as clueless. In his eyes, their struggle to navigate something as seemingly straightforward as reaching the check-in desk reveals a lack of empathy on his part. Lastly, the writer described the passengers' luggage trolleys as performing a shaky dance. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the trolleys instability and difficulty in moving smoothly. Moreover, the writer's use of personification is particularly effective as it implies a sense of frustration and irritation, perhaps reflecting Edgar's anticipation of the passengers causing inconvenience or delay. Now let's take a read of the second story titled The Lost Cave 0500/12. The Lost Cave. Rowan wants to start up his own building company called RS Building Works. He has decided to build an office in the garden to work in and to meet his clients. Rowan was tugging at the thick green ivy plants smothering the 3-meter rock face at the bottom of the garden. Shima looked at the ivy cascading down curtain-like over the natural wall. "It softens that overhanging rock," she commented. It's all in the way, I'm afraid, and I'm not sure what's behind it," said Rowan. "If RS Building Works is going to be successful, I need a space to work in. We have to make some sacrifices if we are going to earn money." "I understand," said Shima. She returned to the house. She was working on an important assignment for a college archaeology course. "One day I will go on a real archaeological dig," she mused, "rather than just writing about other people's discoveries." She smiled at an idea that they had neither the opportunity nor money for now. In the garden, things had taken a more violent turn. Surrendering to one last mighty heave, the roots of the ivy suddenly collapsed away above the rock face with the completeness of a breaking chrysalis shell. Rowan toppled heavily backwards as eager green ivy tendrils sprang towards him. Taken by surprise, he writhed around under many stringy, choking fingers for several seconds before ripping his mischievous assailants away. Unaware of events outside, Shima paused at her laptop thinking about the bees and the butterflies and the intrusive ivy attracted. She realised that she had mixed feelings about the building project. Rowan lifted himself to his elbows. He hadn't broken, twisted or pulled anything important, and he freed himself from the remaining foliage. He looked at what was left of the rock face. A gaping hole stared defiantly back at him as if inviting a standoff. Rowan dropped his eyes to break the gaze and received an immense surprise. 1/2 meter from the base was the floor of a cave entrance. It was surely inviting him to look inside. After brushing off dead-leaf detritus, cobwebs and insects, Rowan slowly approached the mouth of the cave. He peered inside, his heart pounding. Imagine finding a cave in your garden, gosh. The air was still, dry and cool. The smell, an old-age musty scent. Within a few meters, everything appeared lost in suffocating blackness. Armed now with a torch, Rowan advanced into the cave. At first it was dry and vaguely warm. As he travelled deeper, Rowan found himself contorting his shoulders and lowering his head to navigate an increasingly confined space. He walked down a gentle slope with caution, trying to avoid treacherously loose stones underfoot. The walls swallowed the light. He flashed the torch up to the ceiling, then right and left ahead of his feet. In front of him, the path suddenly ended. Rowan could barely believe what he had found. A huge cavern had appeared, dropping perhaps 10 meters below. The height looked to be the same. In the dim distance was the cavern wall. "Hello!" sang out Rowan, and was greeted with a gratifying echo. He laughed out loud, then stood in awe at his find. The bright spotlight shone down on animal bones, though which animals they belonged to was a mystery. It didn't take a genius to realise that the remains of these creatures had once been animals that had run into the cave to escape a predator, only to fall headlong to their death. He spotted deer antlers, which solved one puzzle. Maybe Shima could identify the other. Old, maybe even extinct species? Would this be their new project? Could they hope to make money? Slowly, Rowan moved the beam around the cavern. He realised he had stopped breathing and took in a large lungful of air. It was air that must have lingered in this place for thousands of years, and it left a dry ash-like taste on his tongue. Suddenly he heard movement behind him. He turned quickly. "Oh my goodness!" he heard Shima call out. So let's reread the first paragraph we are directed to. So, in the garden, things had taken a more violent turn. Surrendering to one last mighty heave, the roots of the ivy suddenly collapsed away above the rock face with the completeness of a breaking chrysalis shell. Rowan toppled heavily backwards as eager green ivy tendrils sprang towards him. Taken by surprise, he writhed around under many stringy, choking fingers for several seconds before ripping his mischievous assailants away. Now let's take a look at the 3 images I have selected. So the first one is violent turn. The second one is the ivy tendrils springing towards Rowan. And the last one is the image of the choking fingers. Lovely image there. Now let's take a look at this table, which breaks down the explicit and implicit meaning of my chosen images. So the first one, violent turn. This explicitly refers to Rowan's determined effort to dislodge the ivy from the rock face. The implicit meaning suggests a fierce confrontation between Rowan and the ivy, very much emphasizing his unwavering determination to clear it away. And this resistance and struggle may also hint at the ivy's reluctance to reveal what lies hidden behind it, which of course is a secret cave. Now my second image is the ivy springing towards Rowan. Now the explicit meaning refers to the thin, winding and twisting parts of the ivy rebounding in Rowan's direction. Now this suggests a sense of aggression. Personification, of course, is being used here, as if the ivy possesses a predatory nature and is poised to retaliate for being forcibly torn away from the rock face. And my last image, of course, is the choking fingers, a very striking image there, explicitly referring to Rowan struggling to escape from the ivy as it is tightly wrapped around his body. And this emphasizes how the ivy is exerting an immense amount of pressure on Rowan's body, causing a sense of suffocation and entrapment. Now let's reread the second paragraph we are directed to. So Rowan is now armed with a torch. He advances into the cave. At first, it was dry and vaguely warm. As he travelled deeper, Rowan found himself contorting his shoulders and lowering his head to navigate an increasingly confined space. He walked down a gentle slope with caution, trying to avoid treacherously loose stones underfoot. The walls swallowed the light. He flashed the torch up to the ceiling, then right and left ahead of his feet. Now the 3 images I have chosen, the first one is Rowan being armed with a torch. The second one is Rowan having to navigate an increasingly confined space. And the last one is the walls swallowing the light. So Rowan being enveloped in complete darkness. Now, in terms of that first image, Rowan being armed with a torch, explicitly this refers to Rowan being equipped with a flashlight, of course, to navigate the darkness of the cave. Now, the implicit meaning, the important bit, it very much creates a sense of Rowan entering into a battle-like scenario because of that verb armed. And this is as if he's anticipating encountering something dark, something ominous, something foreboding. And there's this feeling that he needs to be prepared for any challenge that may arise. It also conveys a feeling of trepidation. He's maybe somewhat fearful, anxious. And it suggests that Rowan is venturing into the unknown, a dark abyss that may conceal something mysterious. Who knows? Now, my second image is Rowan having to navigate an increasingly confined space. Now, this explicitly refers to the narrowing space through which Rowan must maneuver in the cave, which progressively becomes smaller and more challenging to navigate. Now, the implicit meaning creates a sense of claustrophobia, making the path seem both daunting and perilous. Now, my last image, the walls swallowed the light. Of course, explicitly, this refers to the cave's refusal to emit light, enveloping Rowan in darkness. And implicitly, this suggests that the cave could harbour secrets, as if it resists revealing what lies within its depths. Now let's take a look at the 2 model paragraphs for this question. The overall effect of the language creates an image of Rowan battling with the ivy, almost as if it is a forceful and aggressive presence trying to ensnare him. Firstly, the writer describes that things had taken a more violent turn. The writer's use of imagery here refers to Rowan's determined effort to dislodge the ivy from the rock face. Additionally, the writer's use of the phrase violent turn is particularly powerful as it suggests a fierce confrontation between Rowan and the ivy, emphasising his unwavering determination to clear it away. This resistance and struggle may also hint at the ivy's reluctance to reveal what lies behind it, a secret cave. Secondly, the writer describes how eager green ivy tendrils sprang towards Rowan. The writer's use of imagery refers to the thin, winding and twisting parts of the ivy rebounding in Rowan's direction. Furthermore, the use of the phrase sprang towards is particularly striking, suggesting a sense of aggression, as if the ivy possesses a predatory nature and is poised to retaliate for being forcibly torn away from the rock face. Lastly, the writer describes Rowan writhing around under many stringy, choking fingers for several seconds. The writer's use of imagery here refers to Rowan struggling to escape from the ivy as it is tightly wound around his body. Moreover, the writer's use of the phrase choking fingers is particularly effective and emphasises how the ivy is exerting an immense amount of pressure on Rowan's body, causing a sense of suffocation and entrapment. The second paragraph reads, "The overall effect of the language creates an image of Rowan's journey into the cave shifting from familiarity to unease as he navigates confined spaces with growing apprehension in the enveloping darkness." Firstly, the writer describes Rowan being armed with a torch. The writer's use of the imagery here refers to Rowan being equipped with a flashlight to navigate the dark cave. Additionally, the writer's use of the verb armed is particularly powerful, evoking a sense of Rowan entering into a battle-like scenario, as if anticipating encountering something dark and sinister, and feeling the need to be prepared for any challenge that may arise. It also conveys a feeling of trepidation, suggesting that Rowan is venturing into the unknown, a dark abyss that may conceal something mysterious. Secondly, the writer describes Rowan having to navigate an increasingly confined space. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the narrowing space through which Rowan must maneuver in the cave, which progressively becomes smaller and more challenging to traverse. Furthermore, the writer's use of the adjective confined is particularly striking as it creates a sense of claustrophobia, making the path seem both daunting and perilous. Lastly, the writer describes how the wall swallowed the light. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the cave's refusal to emit light, enveloping Rowan in darkness. Moreover, the writer's use of the verb swallowed is particularly effective, implying that the cave harbours secrets, as if it resists revealing what lies within its depths. Hopefully, guys, with my 10-step structure, you're starting to get the idea by now. Remember, we want a really sort of formulaic approach to this. It's different to a literary response. If any of you guys do IGCSE literature or world literature and you're watching this, don't blur the two. So we are finally on to our last story, titled The Violinist. If you've made it this far, let me know in the comments and write, "I have made it to the violinist," or something to let me know you've made it this far. If you have, give yourself a pat on the back and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is the 0513 paper. So, Texie the Violinist. This text is taken from a story about a violin player called Seth who plays in a travelling orchestra. The orchestra has arrived in town where Seth will be playing a violin solo in the evening. So, Seth was roaming the streets and looking in shop windows. A few hours' idle distraction made for a more focused mind later, he found. More significantly, he really enjoyed getting to see the locality he would perform in, whilst possibly learning a bit about people who might attend the concert. He stopped in the presence of a small music store and decided to look inside. Partially concealed at the back of the shop was a display of string instruments, at the centre of which sat an absurdly squat violin. To Seth it looked like a plump monarch holding court amidst other carefully arranged instruments. He stared at it, drawn by its commanding presence. The maker had put considerable effort into carving the decorative top or scroll into a magnetically charming face with generous lips pulled sideways and flattened into an expression of permanent merriment. But it was the cheerful eyes now apparently winking and dancing at Seth that really captivated him. More personification. I dare you, the violin-sized tease. Where do Cambridge get these stories from? How quirky yet attractive, thought Seth. I wonder if it plays well. May I try that violin, please? He asked the shop attendant. Violin in hand, Seth stopped 4 strings with his fingers and drew the bow over them with one rapid sweep. He'd produced a rich chord. He was surprised at how strong the sound was. He raised his bow again and the violin replied enchantingly. Seth felt excitement shooting through him. He turned to the attendant. How much is it? He asked. You can have it for a fair price, said the attendant. I didn't pay much for it. A local brought it in last month. Said he'd found it a long time ago. Tried to find out who owned it at the time, but without success. Then he just forgot about it. Later in the concert hall, Seth opened the violin case and looked contentedly at his purchase. He had his old trusty violin by his side, but knew he would play this new one tonight. It felt irrational, but it was almost as if the violin longed to be played, and especially in this venue. The last hour of rehearsing had proved what a magnificent instrument it was. The arrival of the audience and the preparations of the other musicians were now taking place. A multitude of subdued murmurs in the audience accompanied the discordant scraping of strings and sharply persistent blowing of reeds. Now and then a loud trombone would assert itself, or an oboe's plaintive note would rise, demanding immediate attention to its great misery. It was time for Seth's solo. His new violin sang out beautifully around the hall. The audience was completely still apart from a woman who had inclined forward as if straining to see the instrument he was playing. An hour later, as he left, he saw the same woman waiting outside. Hello, I'm Sylvia, she said. Well, that was a surprise. I haven't heard that violin played for years. It's one of the best violins I've ever played, Seth replied. Do you know the story of this scrawl? In reply, Sylvia showed Seth a photograph on her phone. Seth found himself staring back at a pair of bright, cheerful eyes that winked and danced at him. Father, Sylvia explained. My parents played in the orchestra at this very concert hall years ago. Mother had this violin made with Father's face on the scroll. It disappeared after a show about 5 years ago. The orchestra had to leave straight after to go on tour, and Mother was devastated not to be able to take that violin. My parents don't play at all these days, though they sometimes attend concerts here to support the local orchestra. She paused. I think my mother will be pleased to hear that the violin has been found. May I contact your parents? Asked Seth. Apologies, guys. I think I skipped a couple of slides from the previous question. So do make sure that you look at the actual question. Again, the resources are linked in the description box below. However, it's always important to read the question, especially that information after the ellipsis. So, paragraph 3 begins partially concealed and is about the violin that Seth sees in the back of the shop. And paragraph 11 begins the arrival of the audience and is about the activity in the concert hall before the concert begins. So, some really key information there to include in your topic sentences to make sure your paragraphs are focused on what the writer is trying to achieve. So, now let's take a look at the 3 images I have chosen. So the first image is the violin being partially concealed. The second one is the violin having a magnetically charming face. And the last image is the scroll of the violin having cheerful eyes and now apparently winking and dancing at Seth. As if it's kind of like flirting and trying to entice him, like, buy me, because that's what violins do, right? So the first image I have selected is the violin being partially concealed. This explicitly refers to the instrument being almost hidden, an implicit meaning. This seems to hint towards the violin's uniqueness, as if it possesses a mysterious quality waiting to be uncovered, perhaps imbued with some magical power, who knows? The second image is the scroll of the violin being carved to resemble this sort of magnetically charming face of, what was her name again? Sylvia's father. And this refers to the attractive aesthetic of the violin evoking its visual appeal. Now, this also implies that the violin possesses, or seems to imply that the violin possesses, an irresistible allure or charisma, almost enchanting Seth and tempting him to purchase it, as if the violin is putting Seth under its spell. Because again, what I said before, violins have the power to do that. Hey, it's a piece of prose, guys. Anything can happen. My last image is the violin the scroll having cheerful eyes, now apparently winking and dancing, as if, describing the scroll as having this magnetically charming face wasn't odd enough. It's now winking and dancing at Seth. Now, explicitly, this refers to the violin scroll as being carved into a joyful face, Sylvia's father. And it very much suggests the violin is more than just this sort of inanimate object. It becomes a lively and animated presence within the shop amongst all of these other instruments. And it's seemingly intent on enticing Seth further into purchasing it, aka flirting with it. Now let's reread the second paragraph we are directed to. So the arrival of the audience and the preparations of the other musicians were now taking place. A multitude of subdued murmurs in the audience accompanied the discordant scraping of strings and sharply persistent blowing of reeds. Now and then a loud trombone would assert itself, or an oboe's plaintive notes would rise, demanding immediate attention to its great misery. Now the three images I have selected are subdued murmurs, discordant scraping of strings, and lastly, the fact that the loud trombone would assert itself. Let's take a look at the table. So the first image, multitude of subdued murmurs. This explicitly refers to there being a large number of people in the audience talking quietly. Implicitly, this creates a sense of the audience's anticipation and excitement for what they're about to witness. That second image, discordant scraping of strings, perhaps slightly unexpected, but I've been told it's the norm for an orchestra warming up apparently, but this refers to the jarring and unpleasant sounds coming from the stringed instruments. And this could suggest a lack of cohesion and finesse in the music, indicating an unrefined technique in playing the strings, possibly. And this unexpected quality may surprise the audience, who likely anticipated a more beautiful and harmonious performance, despite them simply warming up. Who knows? And that last image, a loud trombone would assert itself. This explicitly refers to the trombone's audible sound above the other instruments, and implicitly it creates a sense of the trombone's commanding presence, suggesting its dominance over the other instruments. So again, a bit of personification there, as well as conveying the trombone's sense of superiority as it strives to seize control and assert itself at the focal point of the performance. Now let's take a look at the last two model responses. The overall effect of the language creates an image of the violin being a standout amongst the other stringed instruments in the shop. Despite its concealed placement, it commands attention and has a certain whimsical quality to it. Firstly, the writer describes the violin being partially concealed. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the instrument being almost hidden. Additionally, the writer's use of the word concealed is particularly powerful, hinting at the violin's uniqueness, as if it possesses the mysterious quality waiting to be uncovered, perhaps imbued with some magical power. Secondly, the writer described the violin's magnetically charming face. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the attractive aesthetic of the violin, evoking its visual appeal. Furthermore, the writer's use of the phrase magnetically charming is particularly striking, as it implies that the violin possesses an irresistible allure or charisma, almost enchanting Seth and tempting him to purchase it, as if under a spell. Lastly, the writer describes the violin as having cheerful eyes, now apparently winking and dancing. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the violin's scroll as being carved into a joyful face. Moreover, the writer's use of personification is particularly effective, suggesting that the violin is more than just an inanimate object. It becomes a lively and animated presence within the shop, seemingly intent on enticing Seth further into purchasing it. And the last paragraph reads, The overall effect of the language creates an image of bustling anticipation and chaotic preparation with a cacophony of sounds filling the air. Firstly, the writer describes there being a multitude of subdued murmurs. The writer's use of imagery here refers to there being a large number of people in the audience talking quietly. Additionally, the writer's use of the phrase subdued murmurs is particularly powerful as it creates a sense of the audience's anticipation and excitement for what they are about to witness. Secondly, the writer describes a discordant scraping of strings. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the jarring and unpleasant sounds coming from the stringed instruments. Furthermore, the writer's use of the adjective discordant coupled with the adjective scraping are particularly striking. FYI guys, if you want to look at more than one powerful word, use the verb coupled. So the adjective discordant coupled with the adjective scraping are particularly striking. And I definitely meant to put verb for scraping there. I do apologise. Where was I? It's late. This suggests a lack of cohesion and finesse in the music, indicating an unrefined technique in playing the strings. This unexpected quality may surprise the audience who likely anticipated a more beautiful and harmonious performance. Lastly, the writer describes a loud trombone asserting itself. The writer's use of imagery here refers to the trombone audible sound above the other instruments. Moreover, the writer's use of the verb assert is particularly effective as it creates a sense of the trombone's commanding presence, suggesting its dominance over the other instruments, as well as conveying the trombone's sense of superiority as it strives to seize control and assert itself as the vocal point of the performance. Another thing to note, guys, if you look at how I've used my quotations, I've embedded them into my sentence so they flow nicely. This is not a requirement. You'll see things in ellipses, you'll see things in square brackets. Research literary present is just because lots of my students, they do world literature and this is what they are accustomed to doing. If you're not good at embedding your quotations, then that's absolutely fine. As previously mentioned quite early on, firstly, the writer uses the image. You can just include your quotation after a colon. That is absolutely fine.
So there you have it, guys. I hope today's video has been useful. As always, I appreciate your feedback, your comments below, and good luck with your English exams next week. Till next time, bye-bye.